Hi, this is Becky Ivins, and I've been selling real estate for 40 years. Our team of highly trained professionals, along with our solid marketing plan, has sold thousands and thousands of homes over Central Oklahoma. This is how we do it. So let's talk about listing presentations. The crucial part of the business is to present what you can offer, your value proposition for the seller. Why should they list with you rather than any other agent that's out there? You know, we've got over 4,000 agents in our metro area. So why would they choose you? Well, it all comes back to simple things. They will choose the person that has integrity, that has competence, and that cares about them. Now, having competence is presenting yourself in a way that they can understand. The seller has to understand exactly what you do. The first thing I do on a listing presentation is first do my homework. You've got to know the thing that the seller cares about most is how much can my house sell for? How much will I get for it? And they sometimes don't realize that the net price, their net value, is different than the sales price. And all they can think about is that 6% they're paying. And they want to separate that out and know that they want to get a certain amount of money. So do your cost sheet. Let them know that it's more like 9% typically than 6%, because they're going to pay part of the buyer's closing costs. They're going to pay to bring their title to date and the filing fees and certain things associated with the transaction. Then prepare your listing presentation with the properties that are the comparable properties. That takes a lot of training and not something that I'm going to address on this video. But preparing a market analysis is knowing your market. You can't just pull up 3 or 4 properties in the neighborhood that have sold and present those as comparables, because frankly, I wish it were more like that. But most of the time there's subtleties in these homes that cause them to be worth more or less money than others. And my luck is that most of the properties I go out on are not in the presentation of the ones that have sold for the most money. And the reason for that being is that a lot of the homes that are on the market never sell. They just don't sell because they're not presented right, and they're not presented for the right price. So the ones that do sell are typically nicer properties than the listings you go out on. When I go out on a listing presentation, the first thing I do is introduce myself. I never assume they know who I am, even though I'm showing up at my appointed time. I typically show up 3 or 4 minutes early. I'll sit in my car, check to be sure that there's no last minute text from my office or anything that needs to be taken care of. And then I'll go in with my folder, and I have 2 pieces to my folder that I will tell you about. One is my research on the property and my research on it's sort of my intake sheet on the listing. It tells me the updates they've told us about, their motivation for selling, their time frames are on there. So I have that. And it also tells me the source. Where did this business come from? If this business came from a Barbara Corcoran ad, I can always mention Barbara early on to relate back to that. But most of the time I will tell you that the advertising source is more than one thing. I dig deep to find out how my advertising is working. If they were referred to me by someone, well, did you also hear the Sean Hannity commercial? Have you seen my signs around? And kind of see what is working advertising-wise. So that's part of my listing presentation, is I gather information to know my client. The client sitting in front of me comes from somewhere, and I need to know where they came from to know how to approach them. Very early on, I've had a conversation with these folks by phone, right? So I know most of the time if they're a dominant personality, if they're interactive, if they're a very point-by-point person and have an analytical mindset. So I know this going in, so I know how to do my presentation, because there are 4 different types of presentations I do depending on the person sitting in front of me. If it's somebody that likes to visit, I sit back and let them talk just a little bit. If they want to show me their house, if they're an interactive person, they're going to want to show me their house. So I go in, I introduce myself, and I say, would you like to show me your house? And then, yes, they want to tell me all about it. The wall used to be here. We moved it here. This had the most terrible linoleum, and we've put in the wood floors. They're engineered wood floors, but they're not real wood floors. We stained it this color. It was too dark. We didn't like it. We sanded it down. We put something else on. They're interactive, right? They like to talk. Now, interactive people, by the way, you have to control your conversation. I let them go on for a long time, and then I direct them right back to what's important in the sale of their property, and that's not history. The history of their property is not important. It is the present state that's important. So we focus on, well, what is in this property? Well, so this room you have set up as an office, but tell me, is that window operable? Can you, do you have egress? Could it be a bedroom because you've got a nice big closet here? So you kind of want to find out about the property. It looks like the heating unit used to be in this closet. Is it in the attic now? How old is it? So you find out about the property. Then I say, do you mind if we sit here? And we sit down and I tell them about my team. I start out by telling them about me and how I've sold real estate 25 years all by myself, and then I decided I needed help, so I hired an assistant. Then when I hired an assistant, it was not very long until I decided, wow, I've got a lot more buyers than I can handle, so I hired a buyer's agent. And then I needed another buyer's agent. Then I hired another assistant. Then I hired a listing partner. Then I hired an operations manager and a project manager. So now we have a nice team. I let them know that I'm not the only person they're going to be communicating with during this transaction. I'm the go-to person if they run into a problem. By the way, one thing you need to know about my team is that my client can get to me at any time. If they don't like what the transaction manager is saying and they question if it's right, or they think they've been told one thing and now they're being told another, I tell them right off the top, by the way, all you have to do to my team is say, that's not making much sense to me. I need to talk to Becky about this. And my team will get a message to me to call. They need access to me, but my team also is required to first try to ask a question to dig deeper and find out what the issue is. If my team can solve it, and my team is full of realtors, by the way, fully fledged, dues paying, card carrying realtors. My staff is realtors. The person that answers the phone is a realtor. So they can help the client, and they can do an awful lot. And that saves us time out in the field so that we can go on and help another client buy another house, go list another house, instead of dealing with business that we've already written. So once I've told the client about my team, I tell them about my marketing plan. My marketing plan is extensive. Sometimes people want to know all about it. I have a nice, it's about 24-page book about my marketing plan. If they want to know all about it, they can read about it. I leave it with them. I just give them the overview of the marketing plan so that they know they're in good hands and that their home will be marketed. I advertise myself in Central Oklahoma as the realtor that spends the most on advertising in Central Oklahoma. I learned very early on it takes advertising money to sell homes, so you have to spend the money. I don't begrudge someone who's just starting out and doesn't have the money to spend, but I do spend a lot of money advertising. So I tell them about that, and I tell them how we convert those leads coming in to actual business and buyers that can buy their home. I also explain that half of our buyers come from our database of people we've been working with on average for a year. And we go back through that database and we've got them classified, and we try to see, well, first of all, before we advertise this to new buyers, let's see if we've got anybody in our database that's been waiting for your house to come on the market. So I go through that whole marketing plan with them, and then we go over the questions they have at that point. Do you have questions for me? And of course they want to know, well, what's my home worth? Well, I have that data right here. I am constantly surprised how I use the public records, I use the multi-list data, and yet other realtors that have preceded me in listing presentations just throw out a number and that client believes it. it amazes me that someone can go in and say, well, your house really ought to sell for 167 to 175. And the data clearly shows it's between 155 and 160. So they want to believe the higher number, of course. So it's my job to show them the real numbers. And will I take a listing for a higher price? I do for about 4 or 5 days, but they have to agree in writing up front to step it down to the market value. I don't want to leave money on the table for anybody. I want to collect all the money we can, but then you need to meet reality. I divide my market analysis into fantasy land and reality land. Fantasy land is what people want to sell their houses for, but they're not sold. That's the active listings. Reality is what homes have actually sold for, and that is reality land, and we deal with it. The last part of my research, after I've seen the subject property, if it doesn't fall within the norms, and I can't clearly see what that property ought to sell for because maybe it wasn't described properly, maybe they had added on an upstairs or a big master bedroom on back and that wasn't reflected and they didn't mention that. So if it's something different than the analysis I brought with me, I show them, well, this is what I brought with me because this is the information I have, but I need to go back and look at the value of your property. And I also like to look at the competition at that point and go, well, it's, the data's pretty clear. It shows 55 to 60,000, 155 to 160. But there are several listings that are not too much unlike yours that are listed as 165. I think we should try 165. And if we can't get good activity and a lot of interest right away, we need to go down to a point that will cause a buyer to take action on your home and buy it. I can teach you to do the market analysis. I can teach you to do your listing presentation. And that's what I do. I train my agents to do a fabulous job. You have to be the agent that cares about your client, a high integrity person. You have to be an educated person in our field, competent with your skills. You have to be honest, and you just have to care about your client and want to make this a career. So buckle that up with a strong work ethic and you're going to do fabulously on my team. I am looking to add members to my team because we do have a lot of activity. We've got more real solid leads than what we can adequately service to the point that we like to service our clients. So call me. I'm at 405-722-3232. This is Becky Ivins. You can always email me, Becky@BeckyIvins.com.